politician or a lawyer.
Peace of mind too, huh? And how much peace of mind it was costing? All right.
It's that time, isn't it? Do what? You want to set up an invitation? Do it. Okay, it is 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get going. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we just thank this meeting today that we can come together and have a meeting of the mind and spirit. So that we can bless us, that we'll have a good attitude and just take care of it. No testimony is lost. We just grant the wisdom.
Amen. We'll go ahead and open the meeting, and the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Have a motion and a second. Did you get that? Leah, or Tom, I'm sorry. Any questions, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, before we get going too far, just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already done so, to please silence your cell phones or turn them off. That way we can minimize interruptions as much as possible. And Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By way of announcement, we have a public workshop for two Florida Recreation Development Assistant Project grant proposals that the county is bringing forward. We have two legislative small-scale amendments to hear, and then we have two requests for continuances. Would you like to take the continuance requests?
Please.
The first item would be item number 5, the Range Project. We're requesting to continue to the November 14, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. The basis for that is to cure the print advertising deficiency. This will protect the notices that the applicant has sent out for this particular meeting. If we continue it to that date certain at 4 p.m. in this location.
Commissioners?
Motion. Go ahead. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You want to comment? Yeah, please come up and identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Mike Clark, and I just wanted to say we look forward to seeing you on November 14th, and we think this is probably one of the most important decisions that you folks will have to make in time to come. And the only thing we ask is we hope that we be allowed to have enough time to make our full presentation.
You'll have it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The next item number 6, the South Walton Commerce Park Lots 34 and 35. We are requesting that item be continued to November 14, 2019 Planning Commission meeting at 4 p.m. in this location. This item was heard by the Design Review Board last week and was continued at that hearing to the November Design Review Board, and that requires us to continue this meeting.
Okay.
We have to cross that hurdle
Motion.
before we get here.
All right.
Approved.
We have a motion. Second. Any discussion? Anybody from the audience wish to comment? Seeing none?
Everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The first item on tonight's agenda tonight is a public workshop. Chance Powell from Walton County Public Works is here to present the outline for these two projects.
Thank you, Chance Powell from Public Works. The requirement of these grant applications is that we present the information that's being submitted to the state at a public hearing. There's two projects that we're seeking assistance from the state for funding there. It's one of them's the Jentsville project. It's some property off of Clear Springs Road in Paxton that was dedicated to the, I guess, deeded to the county with the stipulation that it would be a park. What we're looking to do there is a walking trail, some pavilions, basketball court, the restroom facility and parking lot. The grant funds up to $200,000 for those improvements. The other project is the Eagle Springs Golf Course in Defuniak Springs. Same thing, very similar there. It's a $200,000 grant request. It will be for walking trails that will go around the perimeter of the golf course, improvements to the swimming pool that's there now, tennis courts, and basketball court. If y'all have any questions about two projects, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
The Defuniak Springs, is that redoing the tennis courts, or is that building new tennis courts?
I believe it's a complete reconstruction of it is what we're seeking in the grant.
Do you know how many miles of walking paths will be around that thing?
The planned, I guess, extent of the walking trails is a little over 2 miles, I believe, right at, I think it was 10,800 and something linear feet, which close to about 2 miles.
How about in Paxton?
The Paxton one is much shorter.
Is that around the lake yard there?
I'm sorry?
Is it around the lake yard there?
No, it's,
Paxton?
no, at Paxton, it's, off of Clear Springs Road, just north of the school there off of 331. It's off to the west side, I believe, is Clear Springs Road. I'm not familiar with the lake yard at Paxton.
Well, I think part of that lake yard from Florella is in Florida.
Okay.
Part of it's in Alabama, but most of it's in Alabama.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none. Open it up for members of the community. Anybody have any comments, questions? Mr. Jones? Okay. Anybody else have any comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we need to take any action on this? Or is it just a workshop? We don't need to do anything.
Public discussion, I don't think there's any action that needs to be taken, correct, Chance? No action needs to be taken here.
No action, but I did want to mention at the Jentsville Park, all the walking trail there would be elevated. It's a boardwalk type section through some low-lying wetland areas.
That'd be kind of cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next two items are legislative in nature, the first of which is item number 3, the Thorpe small-scale amendment. This is a request to approve by ordinance. It's been reviewed by Bob Baronti of our staff. It's a small-scale amendment application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates on behalf of James Ferdinand Thorpe, requesting approval to change the future land use from rural residential to commercial with a zoning of change from rural village to general commercial on approximately 1.146 acres. Project's on the southeast corner of U.S. Highway 331 South and Rodney Drive and is identified by the parcel number in your package. The applicant has met the requirements to move to this level of review, and their consultant is available to answer any questions and to present their case.
Okay, we'll open it up. Applicant's not here?
Bob informs me that the applicant is going to be late to the meeting. And he's here now.
Talk about good timing.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates. I'm here to represent the Thorpe zoning change. As I'm sure Mac has introduced, the property is located on Highway 331, north of the bridge at the intersection of 331 and Rodney Drive. It's in the layered unrecorded subdivision. Property is within the rural village zoning currently. Directly across the street is light industrial, as well as commercial designation, and just south of the parcel is also commercial designation. We're requesting to be rezoned to commercial for obvious reasons with the expansion of Highway 331, the widening of the road. The bulk of that corridor, I believe, will become commercial in nature, and it doesn't lend itself to being a residential lot right there on the busy highway. So if there's any questions from the board, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Commissioners?
I did have one, just point of information, where will the entrance and exit be?
We have had a phone call from the neighbors. Of course, Rodney is a small residential road. We have no problem with our entrance being on Highway 331. With the indulgence of the board and staff, perhaps a secondary, just an outlet onto Rodney for a means of secondary egress, but the primary entrance would be on Highway 331.
Difficult to have too much traffic going on Rodney Drive. That is a very small street.
Right, right. And we wouldn't want to see that access become overburdened. It would be negative to the operations of the commercial development as well as the adjacent neighborhood.
Do y'all have any idea what may go there?
It is, Mr. Thorpe is the owner of a heating and cooling business, and he intends to put his personal shop there. Yes, sir.
I think it makes a lot of sense. We've had several of these in the last several months, and I think we'll probably have a whole lot more coming up. Especially those 331 frontage lots are not.
Right.
They're not conducive to residential. Anybody else have any questions of the applicant?
Thank you. My apologies for almost being late.
All right, does anybody from the audience wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is item number 4 on our agenda. It's the Burnt Pine Commerce Park Small Scale Amendment. This is a request to approve by ordinance. The project's been reviewed by Bob Baronti of our staff, and this is a small scale amendment application submitted by Nautilus Civil Engineers, Inc. on behalf of John King, requesting approval to change the future land use from conservation residential to commercial, and the official zoning district from conservation residential 2 to 1 to general commercial on approximately 9.8 acres. The project is located approximately 0.6 of a mile from the intersection of US 98 and Goldsby Road. It's on the west side of Goldsby Road, identified by the parcel number in your package. The applicant is here and is prepared to present their proposal.
All right. Anybody have any questions of staff before we get into the applicant? All right. All right.
Good evening, Curtis Smith with Nautilus Civil Engineers. We're here today to bring you the small-scale amendment and rezoning for the Burnt Pine Commerce Park. This project began some months ago, right before the comprehensive plan was finally approved for final adoption. And the reason I state that is because the project was really based on a very specific sentence in the comprehensive plan before that addressed Goldsby Road within 3,000 feet of US 98. The comprehensive plan has since been amended to remove that statement. However, the intention that was there before still really stands today, and also the proposed amendment still falls under the regulations of what the comprehensive plan has been amended to. I'm going to read you that specific statement, which says the general commercial land use category shall only be located on parcels and lots fronting and with direct access to US 98 and US 331. An exception to this location criteria may be made by the Board of County Commissioners for parcels on Goldsby Road within 3,000 linear feet of US Highway 98 if a special 1.5 acre land use buffer is provided adjacent to existing or allowable residential uses that is not on state-owned land. So that statement that was in the comprehensive plan for many years really tells you that this entire 3,000-foot corridor here was intended for commercial. And in fact, currently, you'll see on this map here, you'll see that there are currently 6 parcels that are not state-owned lands, that are those 10-acre Santa Rosa Beach parcels. 2 of them are actually developed already as pretty high-density commercial developments. There is the Coastal Business Center, the Topsail Warehouses. One of those parcels is still zoned as conservation residential. However, it's being used for South Walton Utility Company's water towers. So obviously that's more of a light industrial use. It just happened to fall into a category that fit. There are 2, the last remaining 2 parcels are the subject parcel on the north end of that 3,000-foot corridor. And then there's one additional a little bit further south. These are the last 2 parcels that remain within that 3,000-foot corridor that was stated in the old comprehensive plan on Goldsby Road. So that's really the basis of what this was for. And we think we've got a pretty good plan here of development that really fits with that commercial sector there. And I believe the John King was the representative, the applicant here on this project. I believe he's gonna present some things to you on this, and then I'll answer some questions after that based on our very specific plan we've got for this parcel.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to be here. My name is John King. I've developed a number of projects in that area there, and I just want to discuss, although past development is no guarantee on future outcome, but if you've done this type of development that I've done for 40 years, I think my track record speaks for itself. I haven't been up here presenting anything since Goldsby Road, we put that through. Some of you will remember Goldsby Road went to Goldsby Road Commerce Park, Goldsby Road's Commerce Park right here, or Goldsby Road Industrial Park, later made it to here. I developed this 660 feet to get the Botany Bayou subdivision, which I developed, and then this area right here, John Martin, who developed Mac Bayou Estates, contributed this 160 feet. I went to Commissioner Meadows at the time and drove her out there and asked her to please, number one, we're going to change this piece to general commercial next to this commercial project. And she went along with that through the vote if we would put an 1.5 acre buffer right here. That acre and a half buffer is 8 times the land development code requirement between commercial and residential. We went along with that. She actually did that for a neighbor to this project that had moved there the year before and was raising heck about it. And we didn't push back on it. We went along with it. You know, I've got a long history of working with my neighbors on various projects, setbacks, buffers, landscape. In the case of this project, I've been trying to buy this property for over 20 years. When I initially tried it, there wasn't anything, and I was going to improve everything here. I see a couple of my neighbors here live in projects that I've developed. They're going to speak to that, but until I developed these projects, this road, there wasn't any connections there.
Mr. King,
So-
real quick, I couldn't see where you were pointing to.
Oh,
Where
I'm
is that-
still shaking. I got to settle down a little bit.
There ain't no sense being nervous in front of us, man. We easy. It's that meeting in 2 weeks, you gotta be nervous, okay? But anyway, my question is, I couldn't see where you were pointing to. Where is that acre and a half buffer on the property?
Right, this property that was changed from conservation residential to general commercial a number of years ago. And when meeting with Commissioner Meadows, we talked about a more,
Okay, so it's on the,
yes, sir, right there.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And so, you know, this road was not yet through, but she helped us with the plan of making these areas Curtis talked about as future general commercial, because you've got all this residential development, but, you know, the air conditioning guy, where does he go for his operation? And you have to have some of that, or with more traffic on Highway 98. This is a dangerous intersection at this point. I'll speak to that in just a minute. But, you know, the landowners and the developers of these projects were responsible for getting 90% of Goldsby Road, which is now called Goldsby Road, through here. So, at any rate, this is the section that I developed on the overhead. This road here is crushed rock base, crushed rock subbase. It has a centralized drainage in three locations. When this was designed, it's over constructed for what you could or would do development of roads wise. This is, again, crushed rock base, crushed rock subbase. I didn't ask for any help from the county with this. Y'all often do that for developers. All I asked is that you don't stripe it and you don't take the trees out of the right of way. These trees, I took precautions of put 6 inches of fill over the root, waited 6 months, put 6 inches of fill over the roots, waited another 6 months, put 6 inches of fill over those roots. Now, every one of these pine trees, instead of how most people develop, go in, clear everything, root rake it, and good luck saving those trees. And so they die off, and it's in a slow, expensive death of getting rid of those trees. So in this particular area, again, that was my contribution to get to Botany Bayou subdivision. In this area, in addition to Botany Bayou and Forest Park, there's a subdivision called Enchanted Estates, and I hope the developer of that is not here. It's not all that enchanting. This subdivision, on 10 acres, they put 69 homes. Botany Bayou, I put 71 single-family homes on 40 acres. 4 times as much property for the same amount of homes. The other thing about that subdivision is, you know, everybody's going to talk about how beautiful an area it is, and it is, and I hope you'll agree that I've had been instrumental in that. But this subdivision was such a parking problem that the neighbors, unless Mike and his group approved this, the neighbors have gone in and striped on the road, which is a right-of-way, east, west, north, and south, and cul-de-sac, to add parking. I think inappropriate development. Just north of there is a project I did called Forest Park subdivision. Not everybody wants to live in a gated community like Botany Bayou. Not everybody wants to pay the association dues for a pool, a common area dock, and the things that I put in that development. This is Forest Park again. This is I see Mr. Borbeck here. This is his home where the pickup truck is. This development, if you see how the road meanders through there, my development cost will be 25 to 30% more than anybody else's that does this type of development. And the reason is the roads meander, but it has some style. The vegetation, I don't build the road up to kill all the vegetation. I actually cut the road down so the owners don't have to fill a ton to get 11 inches or 12 inches above the crown of the road. In the case of this and almost everything I've ever done in 40 years, this road is crushed rock, sub-base, crushed rock base. So if these owners, when I turn that development over to them, if they want to turn the road maintenance over to you, neither you have a burden, or if they keep it themselves, they're not have a burden. This road's 15 years old. It looks like it's 15 days old. Again, Botany Bayou subdivision, I would just speak to the quality of construction. If I'm allowed to go forward with your blessing on this other project, it will be similar and same and greater quality. This development here, these column caps, quality-wise, this column cap has not, it's fiberglass rebar. Now, that's 8 times what metal rebar is, but here's the catch about that. This column cap is 22 years old. It's never been painted. There's no cracks. There's no decay in it at all. It stays the same, just like the roads of how the construction. I'm going to show you some fences down there in a moment, but I'll just say this is my minimum when it comes to fences, whatever subdivision is in, so this is a shadow box fence. If you go down Goldsby Road right now, you're going to come to Mike Bayou Estates, and every fence is different. There's one fence that's a quality of what I do, no uniformity. Commissioner Gladwell, when we were working on the Foreman developer agreement, Foreman Family Trust, he made a suggestion that when the frontage of Chet Holly Road be uniform and have a fence and landscape buffer there. We agreed, or the Foremans agreed immediately on that. We get that. The Mac Bayou Estates, there was no regulation on what they could do, and so you got a bunch of eyesores that, again, this is the pool house at Botany Bayou. In Botany, this is a standing seam roof, no exposed fasteners. This is a 50-year roof. This is 3 or 4 times the expense of a dimensional shingle or a 5V crimp roof. This is the trim here, the wooden stuff is cypress. It looks the same today. The building is concrete block. The interior walls are concrete block. So I'm not passing on a problem to in this case, my neighbors or future owners. Botany Bayou again. If you've not been through here, you've been through Baytown, the oak trees are spaced exactly like they are going into Baytown, 50 feet apart on each side of the road. Those in Baytown are 5 years older. These trees, similar hammock coming as it. Botany Bayou and all my developments in the future and some in the past, I give a 70-foot right-of-way to the utility companies. So Gulf Power and Cox or whoever it is, in every subdivision, they try to stay in that 50-foot, everything's unsightly. Here in Botany Bayou subdivision, this is what you see as you drive through. The same pedestal, but the planning of this. Great development has got tree homes as the backdrop of the trees. Again, quality-wise, this is a cul-de-sac in Botany Bayou. I put extra thickness asphalt, I think it's a 1/2 inch additional on the asphalt, so that if there's in August a concrete truck with new tires, they're not jabbing into that. If it's your road in the future, I'm not passing that cost on to you, and I'm not making it a burden to the HOA, some of those owners who are here. The development business is a fight. It's just to get great product, it's a fight. Here's a fight. This makes no sense at all to me. This owner is a builder. I try to get builders building great product early. They did. He comes in here and he fights me over this vegetation here, wanting to clear it. Well, he doesn't like pine trees. He doesn't like palmettos. But now people ride through. People ride through Botany Bayou and go, this is so nice. They don't know why, but it's this type of development. So this was a big fight. I was going to find the guy to get to that. And anyway, you see some of the landscape. Some of y'all noticed that Highway 98 on the south side opened up today. A lot of pain to get there. Initially, this is what I thought was going to be the front part of this project. Not what you call a great flyer. What this is about, and I do this before I deliver a project or really get serious about something, is I went to your HVAC guys, I went to your pest control, your surveyors, your subcontractors, people, and walk into their office and say to them, if I could give you a inline, attractive, awnings, bricks, stucco, veneer, but in line, if I could give you a quality product, great look, for less than you're paying for rent and you own, if I could, would you? I could sell this whole thing out in no time, do quite well. But what I've discovered in going to some of those locations is their employees are driving from Defuniak and Crestview. I was with one of my prospects for that office manager, living in Paxton, driving an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So there's such a demand for workforce housing. You know, it was affordable housing. You know, everybody talks about affordable housing. It's a bunch of baloney. Nobody can develop affordable housing. It is undoable. Unless you're in a big market and they're tiny units and you got 300 of them, you cannot do them. Workforce housing, we're close in some developments. The new buzzword is attainable housing. In this location, go ahead, Curtis. Yeah. Let me point to this a second. So in this location, within 5.5 miles either way, there are 75% of the service jobs. If you were looking at an area that are on this peninsula, that takes in 5.5 miles, gets you to 393 and gets you a little beyond Silver Sands Factory Outlet. Every one of these stores, every one of the restaurateurs, everybody talks about the plight of that employee, but think about the employer. If Roger brings in somebody, a x-ray tech, and they have to live in Defuniak Springs, here's what happens to him. As a business owner, Keith Howard, same in here, Publix, is they've hired the people, they make them proficient, now they're starting to be part of their team, part of their system, and then that employee realizes that his $18 an hour or $16 an hour, or whatever it is, that 25% of that is going towards his transportation and his wear and tear tires, fuel. And so y'all did a study years ago, back when gasoline was over $3 a gallon, that was the case. 25% of their gross income is taken up in transportation. So we've got to do something. And I just make the point that if this is not the project, and I'm not opposed to doing this. When I did Fountain Plaza, I didn't own both sides of the street like I do on this would-be project. I owned one side of the street. I got the guy on the other side of the street to do the exact same footprint, the exact same. So it looks like something. It's an attractive, if you've not been there, it's across from McDonald's. So similarly, I hope that my neighbors were going to come here today, because it always shows that Jay Oldham said it's always the development you just left. So they'll come out, and I hope instead of opposing it, that they would want my style of development. If I get to develop it, this isn't mine. This was 1 foot thick block walls, poured solid. Dow Tile, my tenant, would have taken a metal building with lipstick. This building was 35% more than a metal building. I'm just attesting to the quality of the development. So Curtis is getting nervous. He wants me down. So I'll sit down here. This is Goldsby Road again. Oh, but some of you be aware of this. Because Mac's insistence, this is 30A and Highway 98. St. Joe is going to make a connection to here to here. You're going to make a connection from here to here. So in the future, whether you live in Botany Bayou or you live in this development or here, in the future, you're going to be able to get from Driftwood States to 30A without getting on Highway 98. But, I see some children in the room here. You explain this to them in a classroom or otherwise, they get this right away. Some of you old guys like me, sorry, Tom. Here's the thing. In the next 5 years, and today you have, all you are aware, you have, Larry, 4 buses being built to get people from Defuniak to the annex. 4 buses being built to get people down here. But in the near future, you'll have autonomous buses, or you'll have a shuttle either through private or public and get people around here. And that's what's got to happen in this area. Nobody wants anything denser, but you can't just I can't keep talking about affordable housing, workforce housing, or attainable housing without doing something about it. And this is just a perfect spot for the jobs, the transportation, and the future of being able to get around. It's the only place that I'll ever be able to get anything attainable in this area. A young lady I met this evening, she had commented and sent you an email about, and I think she's going to speak tonight, about this intersection. The only thing I ask that, I don't know, Mike, it may be out of the ordinary. The only thing that I would ask, if I get approval on down the road and come back with the full-blown drawings for the project, is that this intersection, that I'm allowed to use my proportionate fair share for a right turn lane, maybe a deceleration lane. When we put, Merlin Allen, some of y'all know, God rest his soul, great guy. He approached a bunch of business owners, developer types, retailers, the hospital, Roger and Jeannie Daly and Keith and all. Merlin went to the state and got the state to agree from here to Mac Bayou Road to improve the median. It's out there today, you see it today. If we, the business owners, put up half the money, the state would match that or vice versa, and the county would maintain it, and they're doing a great job of it, by the way. And so when this was done, I asked Ryan Douglas, was kind of working on Goldsby Road, the extension. I asked him to put conduit underneath Goldsby Road. So potentially, and I asked the landscapers and Merlin to put the well and the electronics or pump, and the well and pump here. So now we got room for a right out, needed for safety, and we got a conduit to do water with the goal of toning down, nothing against Bob Goldsby's industrial park, but it's just not pretty. Tone down the big tank. And so we've got all that in place. I'd like to make that part of the project proportionate fair share or transportation fee. If there's enough money, I'd sure like to see some bike paths, some more connectivity so we can get down to Walmart and I'll be here with if you got any questions or.
Okay.
I think that's probably it.
He took all your time, didn't he, Curtis?
I was gonna make one correction. I failed to mention one additional lot that was changed to commercial.
I have a question.
I do want to make the point that I live there and I own several other properties.
Okay. Go ahead, Barbara.
Were you referring to East Lamb Drive that would be put through to West Hewitt Road?
Yes, ma'am, that's on your all's future,
You all being
county.
the county. That is already approved and in the plan?
No, it's been, Chance, I saw Chance, maybe he would speak to it, that's one of the.
How much wetlands are on this property?
There's about 3 acres, virtually in the center, east center.
What are y'all gonna do with that?
Currently, we're actually, we're minimizing impacts to that by just basically crossing through it. That wetland starts, I believe, just a little bit far north here, and then it kind of drains, it goes under Goldsby Road, across.
Commissioners, y'all have any other questions for the applicant? Mac, I have a question, maybe you can answer. They're referring to the previous comp plan and that verbiage not being carried over. Was there a reason it wasn't carried over? Was it just?
We typically eliminated the location-specific requirements when we updated the comp plan and moved those things out of the comprehensive plan. If we felt like they were still necessary, they appear in the land development code. However, these two sites, one that was already changed to general commercial and this particular site were preliminarily approved by the Board of County Commissioners several years ago. We made an amendment to the comprehensive plan and land development code, locational criteria, to identify commercial properties that were 3,000 feet or less from US 98 up Goldsby Road. And that was the mood of the commission at the time. These two properties were moving through the development or the land use change process at the same time. We had to wait and make the comprehensive plan change and land development code change. When we got that done, the O'Donnell property moved through the process. The Zeal property ownership at the time did not continue with the process. But that was still available until we updated the comprehensive plan December 12th, 2018. And we believe that the board's previous assertion that a commercial use on this particular parcel and the other parcel were still effective as far as policy, and we were supporting this change to general commercial.
Okay, so it wasn't taken out because you decided or your staff decided it wasn't appropriate?
That is correct. And we had a number of public hearings, both the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners over the land use, these two parcels and the land use change to general commercial.
Okay. So it would still fit?
It would still fit. There's a tremendous need for housing in this area that would be suitable for our service industry, our nurses, the people that work at the hospital, the people that work at Grand Boulevard, and the retail and restaurant and grocery industry. It's just tough to find housing for that segment of our population in South County. As John mentioned, the county has received a grant from FDOT to begin essentially commuter service for service workers from North County to South County. We hope to have that service running shortly after the first of the year. We have buses ordered, but it speaks to the problem of needing to get folks closer to where the jobs are. And in this particular proposal, I think they've identified approximately 144 apartments that would be a component of this proposed development that is shown as the need for the land use change. And those apartments would serve our South County very well.
I know I saw it in here somewhere, but it may not be for you, maybe for the developer. As far as traffic, how is that traffic count going to impact Goldsby Road and then the Goldsby Highway 98 intersection?
Well, certainly any development proposal that would come forth if this land use change is approved under the new general commercial zoning would be required to do a traffic study to indicate where their trips would be distributed and whether or not there would need to be operational improvements based on the existing background traffic in the neighborhood, including the development that is under construction and received plat approval Tuesday night, Treasure Trove at the north end of Goldsby Road.
But this is considered a collector road, so it would be appropriate for commercial.
It would be, and what we have south of there is commercial and light industrial. More so light industrial as we get closer to US 98. But any operational improvements that would be required, whether that be turn lanes or a traffic signal, if the level of projected traffic would warrant that with FDOT, those things would be considered at that time that the development proposal would be reviewed.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right. You all have anything you want to add before we open up public comments?
The only thing I was going to add on Goldsby was, Goldsby is not currently part of the CMS system, although we're going to mobility soon, so that may actually happen before we get to the second portion of the project. But US 98 is part of it. There's a traffic study as part of this whole process that we've done. We've identified the impacts of 98. Like John said, we will have to pay proportionate fair share, the developer will. So that money could definitely be used for improvements there at that intersection.
All right, we'll open it up to public
I got a comment, I
go
got
ahead.
a question. Mac, currently that property zone 2 to 1.
Conservation residential, 2 units per acre.
It's gonna be hard to get anything in there that's gonna be affordable housing with property that size.
It absolutely will, given the values of property in South County right now, especially in this particular neighborhood.
So more than likely, this will come back for a land use change no matter what?
I expect that it will, just because of the economics of the property value and the present level of entitlements on this particular
All
site,
right, all right.
and the location.
But the commercial allows for the apartments or multifamily.
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up public comments, and I'll just go through this stack, and then anybody who's not in here, if you wish to comment, you'll be allowed to comment once we get through these people. Kristen Nelson? Yes, ma'am, you got to come up front. And please say your name and spell your last name for the record.
Okay. My name's Kristen Nelson, last name Nelson. And I'm here basically to voice concerns about the traffic that would be added to Goldsby with the change to commercial. It's hard to tell through some of the pictures unless you actually go down Goldsby. But right now it feels very much like a residential street. There's multiple bus stops on Goldsby where the bus stops right on Goldsby. There, people ride their bikes, people walk, people jog. And even the traffic level that it's at now is, I feel like, getting to be dangerous, especially with the Highway 98, that crossing. It gets backed up. Turning can be really tricky. It can be dangerous. It's not just tricky, it's dangerous. My neighbors have mentioned multiple times about how they've seen near misses and some major accidents barely averted when they've been sitting out there waiting to try and either turn or cross onto 98. So that is a concern, as well as because it is already difficult to get across 98 to get to school, or wherever, to get to work, pretty much anywhere, there's it sort of sounds like there would be a lot of commercial on Goldsby, but when you drive down it, you realize there's really not. There's the warehouses, and, but that really doesn't, I haven't noticed that creates a lot of traffic. There's not stores where people are going into, shopping, parking, leaving, that type of thing. So another issue is that I think a lot of people would be forced to go kind of the back way to get over to Mac Bayou, because Mac Bayou does have a light to get onto 98. The issue is, well, one of the issues is that Mac Bayou already gets backed up in the morning. With, a lot of the neighborhoods like Driftwood, there's a lot of people that live up there as well, and they need to be able to access Mac Bayou to access 98, just like the people on Goldsby do as well. So I know there's a lot of my neighbors are very, not just concerned, but I would say really upset about the idea that it may be changed to commercial. There was a petition that got up and running today, and just since this morning, there's nearly 90 signatures. People feel very strongly about it. I think the reasons that they feel strongly about it are different. I know some people have it more from a conservation perspective, because we've seen bears, and actually a mama bear and 2 cubs that have crossed that street, crossed Goldsby, and so there's a lot of wildlife in there. My primary concern is just safety, because like I said, there's multiple bus stops on Goldsby. Goldsby is hardly safely supporting the traffic it has now. And if you keep adding more traffic to that, there's no question that will be unsafe. It's already barely containing what it has now. And that's my main concern. And again, it's not with residential, it's with the traffic that would come with commercial. Like I said, I live in Botany Bayou. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And that's, a beautiful neighborhood. That's not what I'm particularly concerned about. It's the commercial that's going to bring with it a significant more amount of traffic.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You said the commercial that's there already has not brought traffic, right?
It has some, but I feel like there's not shops. Like there's not there's not a dry cleaners, there's not a shop. It's a warehouse where people can kind of park and then they work out of.
Right.
So, and it's also right at the mouth of Goldsby. So right at the mouth of Goldsby 98. Whereas this is much, I think the issue for a lot of people, from what I've heard from my neighbors, is that it's too far north on Goldsby. It's closer to the neighborhoods than it is to 98. And so I know that there's, like I said, there's people that, myself and other people that feel not just are concerned about it, but genuinely very upset about it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Jennifer Dodge.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dodge, D-O-D-G-E. You have to forgive me, this is the first time I've actually had to do this. So I have a few concerns about the rezoning of the property, and since I only got about 3 minutes, I guess I'll just touch on every single one of them. Of course, the thing that I haven't heard brought up in any of these conversations is the surrounding property. Normally, you're dealing with surrounding property that are property owners, like homeowners that may, but this surrounding property, the property that surrounds this property, as well as the property that's across the street, belongs to the state. Okay, it's Topsail State Forest. Okay, it's Point Washington State Forest. It's conservation land. It's there to be conserved. That's the point of it. Okay, this particular lot is closer to the residential than it is she brought that up on the 98. I think I did, and you have to forgive me because I think the sign only went up on Friday, so we are kind of like scrambling to get together the information. So when I pulled it up over on the overhead, I did the linear, and it's like just under 3,000 feet from the highway, but it's 600 feet from the next residential neighborhood, which it just happens to be on the other side, and then there's another lot right next to it that has been a residential street, has already platted for that or been for sale for a while, but I think that the surrounding land should have more of an impact on it than normal because of what it is. I went down to the intersection of Goldsby, and I took a few pictures today. I was there for 5 minutes, just snapping photos, because I wanted to show you what the road looked like. It was in such bad shape because of the semi-trucks coming through there and the traffic coming through there. And there were 3 semi-trucks that came through that stop sign today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in 5 minutes. Okay, and that's just from the 2 areas that you have there, plus you got the water tower. You would think normally it's not going to add to it, but since this is further back and you've got the conservation land that you're dealing with, I went to take some photos of the warehouses that were next to it. And you have to forgive me because my ink ran out in my printer. So I couldn't print you all, each one of you, a copy of this, but I wanted to show you what the adjoining property looked like across the street. This is what it looks like right next to the commercial that's out there. Okay, and it's basically a mud pond. So this is what's going to happen to the state land if you put commercial there, because they're going to have to bring in fill dirt, they're going to have to make it taller, wider, so then all of a sudden your pollution is going to start draining to the sides. It's ugly.
Real quick, I've got a question to that, because you're making a lot of assumptions there.
Well,
when a developer does a project, that's not always what happens.
well, he did spend 20 minutes telling you about the beautiful residential projects that he did, which just convinced me even more that he should do a residential project here. It was zoned residential conservation for a reason, because they wanted to conserve it and they wanted to conserve the surrounding land. I understand his need to want to put in something that's going to make him more money. I sell real estate. I'm about that. I disagree that there is no affordable housing because I sell it every day. I sell it to people. D.R. Horton builds affordable housing all day long, and they make tons of money doing it, okay? I also wanted to bring up what the road looks like in front of the warehouses that are already there, okay? Because the trucks can't pull out, okay, because the road is not wide enough. So they're on the median on the other side. This is what it looks like when the trucks pull out. These are semi-trucks. And you have to forgive me because, like I said, my printer ran out of ink. I think this particular property is unique, as in where it's located and being surrounded by that state land there. We have more of a need for residential housing than we do for commercial. We have strip malls of that nature that are not rented. There's one on Mac Bayou. I ride my bike past it every day. It's vacant. Been vacant ever since they built it, and there's no one there. Now, finding a residential house that's been on the market for a long time, probably not as easy to find right now.
How about apartments?
Apartments have a different effect on the community. They have a different, the people that live in apartments, they're not ingrained in the community, and they don't come to these meetings like this. They rent property. They may be transient in a year or two, but quite frankly, if you need an affordable place to live, we can't all live near the beach, and we just got to deal with that, you know? Sometimes it took me 15 minutes to get here from my house. So say I worked at Sacred Heart and I lived in Freeport. It's 15 minutes. I mean, is that really a hardship on me? Probably not. You know, and plus I could get a bigger place, it'll be a nicer area, rather than living in apartments. There's plenty of apartments out there, and they belong on the busier freeways, like the ones that are built currently, the ones by Walmart. That's where they belong.
Goldsby Road being a collector road should not have anything like that on it, in your opinion.
Not that far down the road, not surrounded by the conservation forest.
Okay. I'd ask you to go ahead and wrap up, because there's a lot of other people who want to speak.
Of course, the traffic we touched on already, but I think that would be a concern no matter what you built there. It doesn't matter what you put there, you know, you got a problem with the traffic and the roads. And I think that should be about it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Phil Hepton?
Got my assistant with me here. She's about to fall asleep. My name is Phil Hepding, Heppding. I a property owner there in Mac Bayou Estates, just north of the development property here. I listened to some of the presentation there, and I can appreciate what Mr. King has done in the area, Botany Bayou, and the other things that he's mentioned. But I also say maybe take him at his word. Some of the things that he mentioned that were, maybe a term that I'll use, blights in the community in Shannon Estates, the number of units that developer put on a property. He's talking, I guess it was 70 units that are in there. We're putting 144, is that what I heard, right here. The other lady that just spoke to that. There's not a whole lot of renters that come to meetings like this. It is a different citizen that has a stakeholder in that. And I think when all the things that he talked about that he's developing, we'd like to see a residential community and something that's not going to create traffic issues in that area. And I think it needs to be a better look at this and the number of units that we're trying to approve for this road. And he mentioned another thing, where we're going to be in 5 to 7 years when some of these roads that are on the drawing board come to fruition with the St. Joe Company. Hearing that everybody in Driftwood Estates is going to now get to 30A via Goldsby Road is going to add a number of different traffic issues in and of itself. So I trust that those issues we'll look at before we grant this approval on this project. And then there's also some other things they've mentioned to the conservation there in this area. I think when this was zoned, what it was zoned, if you go back and look at that, I think that was some of the intent is to preserve some of the surrounding area, because while we're in a drought now, some of that rain, when it does come in that area, the pictures she showed you, that is a problem, and I would have a concern about what happens to those surrounding conservation areas if this project is approved. But that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I got a question for Mac. Mac, the fact that it's zoned 2 to 1 in there, a lot of the stuff in the past that was zoned 2 to 1 was that way due to the lack of sewer?
Yes, sir, it absolutely was. 2 units to acre creates half-acre minimum lot size, which is the health department standard for a lot that does not have public water or public sewer, and that would provide the adequate 75-foot separation between a potable water well and an on-site sewage treatment disposal system, a septic tank, under present state administrative code rules.
So it really didn't have much to do with conservation at the time?
It was much more about the availability of infrastructure to serve the site. And since that was done back in the mid-90s, infrastructure for this particular roadway was way in the future. It was not time to upzone this particular parcel or other parcels not owned by the state on this particular roadway primarily because the infrastructure was not available to support it. It was shown as a development site, and the development was maximized on the map based on available public services at the time, and that was 2 units per acre, half-acre lot sizes.
The developments that are in there already, are those 2-to-1s, or are they?
No, sir, they're not. They
Better
all had
density.
land use changes to increase the zoning when infrastructure became available in their part of the neighborhood.
So it's kind of the precedence that's been set in there for rezoning or changing land uses to higher densities
Yes, sir.
due to the fact that there is sewer available now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. It is available. That was
Yes.
a little confusing to me, but that, okay, it is available now. That's been changed.
Yes, ma'am. The proposed roadway that Mr. King mentioned, the extension of East Lamb over to West Hewitt, is a new roadway that we are going to be including in the mobility plan. The county already has an interest in public or government patent easements that are run horizontally east of East Lamb over to West Hewitt. So there's not land that would be required to be acquired for this new right-of-way. There's 66 feet from East Lamb all the way over to West Hewitt. It will be some time before that road is constructed, and obviously the Board of County Commissioners has to approve that, and then we have to find funding for that, but that will provide a significant relief for both Mac Bayou and the properties at the north end of Goldsby Road, and it will take trips off of US 98. Which will become a 6-lane roadway in the near future in this segment.
What type of improvements would have to be done on Goldsby Road as all this stuff happens?
I would expect we would have some kinds of turn lanes related to this proposed development at US 98. Whether or not the level of traffic at that time would trip the threshold of a signal warrant that would provide a traffic light there, we'll certainly ask them to analyze that and see if a signal would be warranted there based on whatever development is ultimately proposed on this site and all of the development that will have already existed at that time.
One more question, Mac. If this project is approved, this land use change, as opposed to just doing one to increase density, would the traffic be higher or lower, just in a rough estimate? Because a lot of what we're looking at, or what it looks like we're looking at on this commercial, is low traffic density.
I'm not sure I can directly speak to
Okay.
that.
I was just curious if you had an idea on that.
I don't.
Okay. Done with Mac? All right. Autumn Short?
Hi, I'm Autumn Short. My last name is Short. And I own several properties, but I do happen to live in the eyesore Mac Bayou Estates, as some of my other neighbors are here too. I did do the math. So I personally have 5 small children that ride the bus right there, and we do get horrible traffic. We have semi-trucks that come down and think, oops, I've gone too far, and it tears our roads up. And it's also dangerous for my kids getting on and off of the bus right there at that bus stop. But I did do the math. So I have 5 kids. I have more than 2 cars. If you have 144 units and those people have just 2 cars, that's almost 300 cars additional that are coming and going. So that would be your traffic question just for that. But also, somebody spoke to the conservation aspect. We have eagles that nest there, and I actually own the property that looks at this property, and I manage the radio tower property as well. And it's directly behind my house. And I am concerned because I spoke with his son when he was on the radio tower property with a gun. uninvited. And he told me that there would only be housing and a few offices. So now I'm confused because I thought there was going houses and just single-family houses. That's what he told me. So I'm confused about trusting what I'm going to be told anytime. And I love Botany Bayou. I think it's beautiful. I would love for my neighbors to, you know, have their eyesore looking like that, as you called it. But I need my road safe, and there's too much traffic there as it is. And the property that is behind the radio tower property that I manage is already listed as residential. So we don't need any commercial properties coming this far back because we're already feeling the effects of the ones that are up closer to 98. And it's hard to keep control of your car when you're turning onto Goldsby because of how the semis tear up the roads. And I personally pick up trash on the side of the roads from a lot of the businesses there. And in fact, there's one piece of styrofoam that I've watched for 3 years since I've moved in to see if anybody's gonna pick it up, and the answer is nope. So there's just a lot of different aspects that come with commercial, and you could say, well, that's speculative. It's also speculative that that road at the back will go in and alleviate any traffic. I mean, it's not even there yet to help with that to see if it does alleviate. I really hope that you will consider keeping this low-density housing. Everything he's built in Botany Bayou is gorgeous. I would love to have something like that, low-density, single-family homes behind my house, like his son told me.
Thank you. Terry Gorbach.
Hello there. My name's Terry Gorbach, Gorbach. First of all, John's a great developer. I live in this area as well. One of the themes you picked up on early on was the traffic. Everybody's talked about it. It is a nightmare. Usually 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. in the morning, because we do have those two commercial groups, streets there. And also, again, from about 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock. That's when everybody's coming and going. It's a very difficult time, especially if you want to make a left-hand turn out of Goldsby onto 98. I realize 98 is a state road, but I would only do this change contingent upon a light being there, because I know how much traffic we already have and what dangerous behaviors it generates, people waiting and trucks inadvertently cutting the corners and such. The other consideration would be that you just defer this until such time, and I'm all for development, but I would say knowing what traffic issues we've already got, and if we're gonna have Lamb come down the road and be connected, that's when you put this into play, if you're going to do this. The second consideration, respectful of, because we're only going to talk about this development here, that they haven't talked about is the infrastructure support. Yes, it will have hopefully sewer. I would expect that if you're going to have that high of a density. But more importantly also is the runoff. You've got 9 acres. Some of it is wetlands, I believe. But you're going to have a lot of hardscape here. And I'm assuming at this point, water is going to be traveling towards the bay as opposed to 98. If it's traveling towards the bay, all those developments north of this area have already got huge water problems.
When they do a development like this, the engineering requires that they keep their water that's produced on that property on site. So the engineering would make sure that they did that.
I understand that because I live in one of these developments north of there. Unfortunately, the water does go into the cul-de-sacs along the sides as well. John's been involved in a number of lawsuits with runoff water and issues where all the developments are flooded, but I'm presuming that they're going to drain it so that the runoff is going to not just stay in that there's going to be some surface runoff that's going to have to go somewhere. and
We'll
it's-
let them address the drainage
But,
on it.
okay, but at the end of the day, I'm just concerned about the traffic and the effect on the neighborhood. It's just not conducive with what we've already got there.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. David Lehman? Did I get that right? That's the first time tonight.
Thank you. David Lehman, Lamon. I'd like to start in reverse and address the comment you just made regarding drainage, whereas you said, we'll just let the engineers take care of that. In reference to the Botany Bayou subdivision, if 17 years ago, we just let the engineers take care of that, it failed. The engineers involved in that subdivision have lost their license. The developer responsible for that subdivision, I believe, went out of business and has changed their name and forfeited a handful of things. And we can provide documentation if we have a little more time to support that. But there's major drainage problems in Botany Bayou. The road had to be resurfaced. The road in Forest Parks may look good. That's just because the traffic hasn't had time to build up on that road. But just letting the engineers take care of drainage does not take care of drainage. Botany Bayou is a nice subdivision. It is off Goldsby Road. We do have traffic problems on Goldsby Road. There are 4 buses that stop on Goldsby Road 5 days a week for various children to go to various schools. There are 18-wheelers that are parked on the side of Goldsby Road every day and every night because there's nowhere for them to go. And that's for a small amount of storage units and commercial space off of Goldsby Road. There's no room for them. Goldsby Road was designed for 2-axle vehicles, nothing greater. I believe it's been said already that there are pedestrians that walk up and down Goldsby Road, cyclists, and I believe we've had 1 fatality in between Walton and Okaloosa County off of Highway 98 per cyclist each year for the last, I think, 7 years. I think adding, in my opinion, this type of housing would bring a lot more bicycles and cyclists to the area, and we don't have enough sidewalks to support that. Workforce housing has been known to have a negative impact on property values. I think people, not just around the Goldsby Road area, but other areas in South Walton would like to know that we have workforce housing, which is similar to low-income housing coming to South Walton. Mac made the comment earlier that there would be a future signal included off of Goldsby Road. A traffic signal is needed now. Frequently, every morning and every evening, traffic is backed up for a long time off of Highway 98, people trying to cross the road. That is very common. The comment was made earlier that a Paxton resident would have to travel a long way to work down here. There's no guarantee that workforce housing is going to prevent people from Paxton from transporting down here to work or relocating. If you check with the building department or the planning department, they're as busy as anybody right now. They can't get permits out fast enough for all of the current construction that we have going on in South Walton. There's no shortage of housing. There's no shortage of affordable housing. It was stated earlier, D.R. Horton is building probably faster than anybody else. There's plenty of housing available. We heard Mac mention the 5.5-mile radius earlier. Is that radius centered around this project?
Yes.
Okay, because if that radius was moved closer to 331, I think that would reflect a lot more affordable housing and workforce housing that is available in South Walton. Connecting East Lamb to West Hewitt, is that a project that's going to be contingent on this one? That's completely separate. Okay. you asked earlier if sewer was available, and am I understanding that it's currently available now for that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason that came up was Lee asking the question as it relates to the land use and the zoning being 2 to 1. The reason it was, one of the big reasons it was 2 to 1 was because there was no sewer available. And they had to have half-acre lots in order to put a septic system in. Okay, that was one of the big driving forces behind that zoning. That has gone away. Okay, sewer is available, so that's no longer a requirement. That's the context that question came up in.
And all those properties to the north of there were also zoned 2 to 1, but they went through a land use change so they could put more density in there.
Where you live?
Because sewer is available.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Botany Bayou, the comment was made earlier that it's 22 years old. I'd like to go on record that it's not. The Declaration of Covenants was filed in 2001, which would make it closer to 17 years old. My point in saying that is there's a number of things that have been said earlier that I think can be disputed. So I'd like to go on record to say that I hope that this development is not approved. And if it's looking that way, at least give the neighbors and the residents an opportunity to bring forth documentation that helps contradict things that were stated today.
I want to make very clear, you can go back to your seat. I just want to make clear, we're not approving a development today. Okay?
Yes, sir.
This is simply a land use change.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And the second part of my statement just there was, we don't approve anything. We simply make a recommendation to the BCC on whether we believe the project, whatever the proposal is, meets the requirements as laid out in the code. So that's our responsibility. And just because we say, yes, it meets, or no, it doesn't meet, the BCC makes the decision on whether something is going to happen or not. Okay? Is there anybody else who would like to comment that didn't sign up? Yes, sir.
I'm Chris Wilkie, CHRESWILKE. I also live in Mac Bayou Estates, and I agree with what all my neighbors and other people in Botany Bayou said. And in regards to your drainage with the builder doing it, I know in Botany Bayou, before they did their one-time assessment, the water used to come up to almost truck high on the side of your wheel of your truck. You could kayak in the street before they did their $10,000 assessment, one-time assessment, which was about 8 years ago, I want to say. So that's in regards to the water issue. And then secondly, you have the apartment townhomes north of us, which are pretty affordable. So I don't think we need more right next below us as well. So both sides. In addition to that, if you do end up doing that, there's no sidewalks. So you have a 2-lane road with all these people that are hospitality people that ride their bikes. So now you got hundreds of bikes instead of just 20 bikes that we already have north coming from the townhomes. So it's gonna turn into a major issue with all the bike riders all of a sudden, because there's no sidewalks on 98 either to take them to Grand Boulevard or the hospital, is all everybody's saying either. So I do not think this is a good project at all. I would like to see it as a development as it was intended and not get the zoning changed as he is wishing. And that's my opinion on that.
Thank you.
I will state this on the engineering thing. The engineering qualifications and standards have changed since.
Okay. Well, I know what happened there, and I
yeah,
lived there, and the water is horrible. I got it a foot from my house 3 years ago, and I live in Mac Bayou Estates, which I know who developed that as well.
What I'm saying is the engineering that they do now can't be compared to what they were doing then.
I know, but there's problems out there.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Promise?
I'm Courtney Stubley, Stubley. I actually live on East Lamb Drive, a party not heard from tonight, and I would echo all of my neighbors who spoke to the traffic. That's obviously a concern for all of us. I have 4 kids that you've been hearing tonight with me. They ride their bikes, and already I've been asking to get speed bumps put on Lamb Drive. But as far as the conservation issue, I know y'all spoke to that being about sewer. I think what we're speaking about is that the residential and state forest land around it is inconsistent with putting commercial right in the middle of it. And so to preserve the feeling north on Goldsby, which is very residential, very neighborhood. I know that you might not like the way that the neighborhoods look, but they are neighborhoods, and to have commercial put in and high-density apartments put in right there, I feel is inappropriate. And I'd also like to point out, as far as the workforce housing, there's a large apartment complex going in on Mac Bayou, at the corner of East Mac Bayou and Mac Bayou. That road can handle that traffic. It might need to be widened. I know it's got a light already it does back up, but it's made to handle that kind of traffic. And then additionally, at 393 and 98, there's a large apartment complex going in there as well. And I think that's within the buffer that we were talking about. It's not built yet, so maybe you're not counting it. But those roads are better able to handle this kind of project than Goldsby. And those areas are probably more consistent with this type of use than our neighborhood would be.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Anybody else? All right, seeing nobody will close public comments. Would you all like to address some of these concerns?
I'm going to address a couple of the technical things. I know stormwater is mentioned a lot up here, and at Nautilus, probably our primary work that we do is stormwater related. Yes, there were a lot of sins in the past in South Walton County that we address every day that happened in the early 2000s, and I'll assure you that anything that we do is only the highest caliber of stormwater management. Actually, on a lot of John's projects, I use low impact development design a lot. We do true pervious paver systems that really allows us to do more than just stick big retention ponds in. So we take that very seriously. The trip generation, I just wanted to make a note here because it's important to note on a technical aspect. Apartments actually only generate about 0.68 trips per unit, where single family homes actually generate 1.1 trips per unit for this particular size. So a zoning or a density of about 8 units per acre on this parcel would be nearly the same as the 17 units per acre of apartments. So, I mean, it's really, if you're looking at it from the technical aspect, apartments actually are quite a bit better in terms of traffic. Sometimes commercial is actually a little bit less than some of these single-family developments. There was some comments about maybe some eagles or something. We always do environmental site assessments for these types of things, so we assure that's not an issue. And I think that's all I had on the technical aspects.
Commissioners, a couple things were brought up. I know Kristen, my neighbor, moved here 4 months ago from Chicagoland. She probably was not aware that when Botany Bayou, when her home was built, Forest Park, where Mr. Vorbeck, Terry and Ann live, Enchanted Estates, Mac Bayou Estates, all of the subdivisions that we're talking about, Goldsby Road wasn't even there. I mean, that everybody was going to Mac Bayou. I don't know how it's become such a big problem so quickly. I travel it every day. Yes, you have to worry to turn right, largely because we need a turning lane. That's what I've asked about that. But And then I think Ms. Dodge, when she moved here in 2018, that road had been in for a couple of years. So I don't get the, how we all of a sudden, I wouldn't want to live on Lamb Lane, and I gotta say, that's gonna be the east-west to get people from Driftwood to Walmart. Whether we like it or not, we have to have that. And so it's the only thing that makes sense. As far as apartment dwellers not being part of the community, I take offense to that. I have a sister that raised 2 boys in an apartment complex, drove the bus in the city of Louisville every day for 38 years. Not everybody can live in Botany Bayou subdivision. Any rate. As far as the eyesores, I apologize to the Mac Bayou Estates people. The point I was trying to make was my minimum standard of fences, landscapes that are within sight would require me to make everything uniform. I was not, beautiful homes in Mac Bayou Estates. It's an incredibly wonderful location, convenient to shopping, the hospital, schools. It's an awesome place to live. I was just pointing out that, and I apologize for that. As far as the lawsuits, Terry Borbeck said I was in numerous lawsuits. It's untrue. I was in a fight for 7.5 years. When I say was in a fight, I'm walking out of hearings, dragging my attorney to the Botany Bayou 3 attorney. Every time I would get in front of him and I would say, what do you want? How do you want this to function? And the 2 attorneys, no offense to John, but the attorneys aren't going to work out a drainage issue. It's got to be engineers. And here was the situation. We didn't discover this problem for 5 years. Here's what happened. We have a surveyor who held a stake right here. Took a shot of that. It was supposed to be here. He was at the top of a manhole rim. He should have been at the bottom of a manhole rim. That 4.5-inch difference over the course of 40 acres of flat land caused everything to go, and the roadway is the collection device of the stormwater system. If you ride through Botany Bayou, you don't see any stormwater ponds by design. The road collects the water and transfers it to those ponds. The whole issue with Botany Bayou, again, we didn't find for 5 years, and it was quite by accident. Alan Courtney, one of the landowners and builders, took some shots, and we figured that out, and we did everything we could to address it. I'm glad John's not here, because the blood-sucking attorneys charged the Botany Bayou Homeowners Association $250,000 they spent. I spent $125,000 defended it, and all the while I'm saying, it's a problem. You got to clean it, keep it cleaned out, number one. Number two, it's never going to function perfectly. I'm sorry. And they ended up, the LLC that developed that company, burnt up the funds over the course of 7.5 years. And there was not, so at any rate, I have not been in numerous lawsuits, and it was a survey issue, and did everything I could to straighten the issue. I thought you had a question. You were putting on your sweater.
Just getting cold.
So, at any rate, again, I apologize to the Mac Bayou folks. As far as, the future of that area, I'm going to leave this better than I found it by far. And I think that my neighbors, regardless of what their view of it is today, I think they're going to be far better off with somebody conscientious that lives in the neighborhood, that meets a demand that's there, and develops a product that is going to have some style and a lot of buffered and landscape than they would somebody else winding up with the property and doing something different. Go ahead.
Have you got a timeline?
No, so this, all indications are, I'm just doing a market study to see what demand is for what. This inline commercial, that was my initial market study. I'm open to do just apartments, probably leaning towards that. This site in particular, it's got a trail that goes through it that gets you to Mac Bayou Road like that. It's just an ideal site to move people around with all the things that are happening with the bus and the cars and stuff. But probably 2021 will be.
Just a reminder, we're not approving a development, it's just a land change. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions for the developer before we move on? Nobody? All right, thank you, John. I do want to just, Curtis, do you have something else, or are you done? The only thing I couldn't see was John with that up there. You might want to put it back up. I just want to reiterate real quick for y'all that are in the audience, we're not even discussing a development plan today. That's not what we're here for. We're talking about a land use change, and that's it. Also, remind everybody that we're not a decision-making board. We're a recommendation-making board, okay? And we have to make our recommendations based on what the code says and how the code's applied. So we're making a recommendation to the BCC, either to recommend approval or recommend disapproval of a land use change based on the rules in the code, okay? We're lucky that we don't have to make political decisions. We just get to make technical decisions based on the code. It makes it a lot easier for us. All right, so keep those things in mind. And commissioners, any discussion, comments, motions?
I'd like to say that, as I was saying earlier, since all the subdivisions that these people live in were at one time zoned 2-to-1 conservation due to the lack of sewer, and they were changed for smaller lots, we've set a precedence on what we're doing with people in there because the sewer is available. So if we don't approve this, then John's going to come back with something that's going to have a higher density for residential. I was trying to get to the point and let some of the audience understand too that there's going to be more traffic in there no matter what we do, because we've set a precedence in there. So there's traffic problems on just about every road in Walton County now anyway, because of the growth we're experiencing. But I don't think we're going to fix a traffic problem. We may reduce it a little bit. That's why I was asking the question if this commercial project's going to have more traffic than a residential project would. I don't think I had a clear answer on that, but there's going to be a traffic problem no matter what. So whether we approve this project with the commercial or he comes back later and we approve one that's residential, I was trying to get a feel for what the neighbors would prefer. And I basically heard that they just don't want more traffic, and I'm not sure that's going to be an issue. I mean, I think that's going to be a problem no matter what.
Anybody else? No, ma'am. The public comments are closed. I'm sorry. No, ma'am. Anybody else, any commissioners? No, ma'am.
I think it's a land use change or a zone.
Land use change is all it is.
I motion that we approve it at this point.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? I can't make a second, so.
Got to fail if there's no second.
No second, motion fails. We have another motion. I'll pass the gavel if I can.
Okay.
And I'll make a motion that we approve it, and I'm going to make this statement along with that motion. This is a land use change. It's not a development approval. It's a land use change, and I think based on staff's recommendation, which is clear in the staff report, that it meets the requirements of the code. Like I said, this is a land use change. It's not a development approval. And I think based on evidence presented, the land use change is warranted, so that's my motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second your motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, that's two.
Get a roll call, please.
Roll call?
Aye.
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 Opposed.
Aye.
Motion carries with two opposed.
The opposers were,
Mr. Barker?
Okay, and Mrs. Brooks.
And I believe that's the last item we have tonight. Okay. We stand adjourned.
That wasn't that easy, was it? Wasn't easy.
Oh, my gosh. Find out how to reset this so it doesn't go to sleep.